Anyone joined yet? I guess I'm live and I'm doing it for the first time. So let me know if you can hear me, if there is anyone here. Otherwise, I'll get started with whatever I wanted to share today. And but I'll wait for a couple of minutes for some folks that said they'll join. Otherwise, I'll get started. So let's wait for a couple of minutes. Hello, Pushpendra. Yeah, so yeah, of course, you can start asking your questions if you have any. And also let me know if you can't hear me or see me or there is some issue with the live stream. Um, hey, all. Uh, can you just send me a message if you can see me, if you are live with me here? Um, I only see Pushpendra so far, but I see that 5 folks have joined. Okay, so yeah, hi Gagandeep, hi Pradeep. Um, cool. I think we can get started then. People can keep joining, but whoever joins, please Feel free to say hi here so I know you have joined here. So, yeah, so welcome to the live stream. Thanks a lot all for joining and whoever might be listening to this later. I wanted to do this live stream just to say a few things. First of all, thank you for all the support you have given. And all the feedback you have given helped me improve creating the content. A few folks who reached out to me um, saying good things about the podcast, what they like, what they wanted to improve, and also sharing good feedback, positive feedback, sharing it among their network. So thanks a lot for all that. I wanted to do this live, but then I wasn't sure what is the right time when people are available and what to talk about. So I'm just doing it live here right now because planning takes a lot of time and sometimes it's just best to execute. So I just randomly thought, let's go live at 4 p.m. CET, and here we are. Uh, so I am going to answer some of your questions that you may have, but I also wanted to announce the future episodes that I'm going to release in the new year and also in the next week, and the guests I'm planning to have. And yeah, and apart from that, I talk to people one on one, mainly folks who are new to software engineering or trying to be better at their work, or trying to crack interviews, especially system design and coding interviews. And they asked me some of these common questions, so I thought maybe it's time for just creating a common live stream and just sharing the tips I might have that might be useful. So first of all, I would like to answer some of your questions. So hi Pranjal. Yeah, thanks a lot for saying those words. Merry Christmas, whoever celebrates Christmas. It's holidays these days, so again, a little weird time to be live, but anyways, we are all here. So I'm new to this, so I might miss out some questions. So feel free to repeat if I miss those questions. Um, so let me check. Um, when to use ALB versus API gateway? Okay, that's an interesting one. I mean, it depends. So API gateway is basically uh, an entry point to a set of microservices that you may have and set of APIs that you may want to expose to people. So it's mainly focused on APIs and entering into the services world that you are exposing to the to your customers. So I think that is a right way, or right way of thinking about it, and right use case for using a API gateway. Load balancers, I mean, there are different types of load balancers, and it's very specific to balancing loads across the nodes within one service. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but let me know if it doesn't. And also, if you think it's a good topic to discuss on API gateway, ALB, I can plan a podcast on that. Um, how is structure in production? Load balancer, API gateway, service discovery, service registry, then LB again, something like this. I mean, the structure depends a lot on the type of service. You may have an API gateway, a gateway for some services. For some services, you may not have. It depends a lot on that. Load balancer, again, service discovery. Yes, it's a very common thing in microservices world, because you want to discover your services whenever there is a particular type of request. So the structure isn't really a single structure that you have. It depends. There is a common set of components there that any system would have, but it's hard to answer that question given it is very contextual. Um, I had questions around hands-on learning. Many of the distributed system concepts are too deep, and doing POCs is always not possible. Do you have any strategy for that? Uh, yeah, I mean, distributed system itself is a is a difficult area, and there's so many there are so many folks who are trying to do research, trying to come up with new things to optimize on certain areas, solve some problems that are not solved yet. So it's a vast area. So don't feel like you know you are not going too deep into certain areas. It's totally fine. I think the idea is to keep reading the new things that are happening on the distributed systems world. And for being hands-on, um, yes, I mean, hands-on is slightly different. So let's say when you say hands-on, it can be out of your personal interest. So you can be hands-on by uh, you know uh, contributing to open source systems. And uh, there you can get a lot of feedback how internal things are working by actually writing the code. So you can get involved into writing some of these tickets that people have on the open source different open source technologies. So I would say being hands on is a different thing, but at least understanding those concepts and relating it with whatever you have worked on, I think that's a good strategy to start with. Going too deep, there are many ways you can go deep into it. I think finding the right intuition and finding the why a part of any system is a critical one. So reading white papers help a lot, at least to get those concepts and grasp them, and then relating those concepts to different parts. I think it helps a lot. So if you, let's say, if you read about consistent hashing, just as an example, or Merkle trees, just just do some research and how they are implemented in different technologies, and where they are used. So that itself is a great learning, I would say. I mean, not everyone knows how internally things work. And then next step, you can of course go ahead and implement them, or look at how things are implemented in different open source technologies. You don't have to write code yourself, but at least try to understand them. And I think that is the good strategy, because in real world you may not be ever writing a consistent hashing algorithm or any other distributed system uh, algorithm or concept. But it's good to have that intuition in your mind, because the idea is to be able to apply those concepts when you have something similar. So I think that's the strategy. For me, it does happen that I am able to apply in some of the learning in my org projects, but not generally in anything personal or open source. Yeah, it happens a lot. I mean, finding a good project is always a challenge, be it open source or be it in your team or company, because it depends what type of projects you are working on. And it is also possible that most of it is done when you reach there, so you don't get that opportunity. So it's a challenge, but I would still say, at least understand those concepts. You don't need to implement everything practically, but understanding the reasoning behind it, why certain things are done certain way, what are the trade-offs, I think that's good enough. So don't feel like you're missing out on something. Uh, thank you, Pranjal. Can we have some podcast or live stream where we dissect some features of a large code base like Apache Pinot? Um, Podcast, yes. I mean, I know many folks who work closely with Apache Pinot who have contributed there. I'm not sure, like dissecting the code base itself would be very useful, because for such large systems, uh, either you do it every week and keep track of it. This week I'm going to cover how indexes work. This week I'm going to cover how storage looks like and how different optimization techniques are applied. But still going through the code itself, anyone who has implemented that code, even that person wouldn't be able to understand everything what is happening. So I would say, instead of going inside a code base, understanding those concepts is definitely possible. uh, Certain algorithms at a high level, or um system design at a high level, why certain design decisions were made, and all that. So yes, we can do that. I've already done something on that sort, like for Apache Kafka exactly one semantics, because that is one thing I've seen many people misunderstand. Even I misunderstood it when I started working on that. Um, so yes, I can plan something around that area as well. Thank you. Um, any thoughts on ScyllaDB? Can we expect a podcast on the same? Yes. So ScyllaDB is becoming popular, more and more popular. I saw a post something on, I think related to Hotstar. They have started also using or exploring ScyllaDB. I'm not entirely sure. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Um, but yes, that is in my plan. It's just that doing a podcast, even you need to understand how things work before you can ask those questions. So I'm still on DynamoDB and the next episode of Cassandra, which will be coming somewhere in Feb. Um, but yes, I am on, keeping a track on ScyllaDB, and they also had this amazing conference. I've seen a couple of talks there, which were really interesting. I would recommend doing that. Um, but yeah, I'll plan something on that. I also planned something on Redis, but unfortunately, it's not happening anytime soon because getting in touch with Redis folks is difficult. They have a lot of barriers in between before I can get in touch with anyone. But yeah, I also want to do Redis at some point. Um, um, yeah, and yeah, so keep your questions coming. I'll try to answer those. For how does a role like staff engineer function? Do they code or manage teams? Um, so staff engineering is still evolving in a lot of companies. It's not very clear, and staff engineering depends a lot on the type of companies you're working at. For example, a staff engineer at Google might be completely different. I don't know anything about it because I have never worked at Google. But yeah, staff engineering in general is still growing because there is still a lot of ambiguity. Like a staff engineer is a senior engineer with some people responsibility, or a staff engineer who is someone like a architect who never writes code, or staff engineer is just another senior engineer who is trying to become a principal engineer. uh, but I can say in my case, staff engineering at HubSpot is still growing, evolving. There are many staff engineers that we have hired this year. When I joined, there were only like 10 staff engineers, I think, across HubSpot. Now maybe there are 20. Uh, so the idea is to, yes, staff engineers code. So they have to code. They are they are just like senior engineers, nothing special. It's mainly the impact that they have to make is differs between staff and senior engineers. Not to say that senior engineers cannot have wider impact, but if they do, they have exceeded their expectations, is what I can say. But staff engineers, they want to work on strategic projects across teams within an organization, and they want to have this higher visibility, like what is happening across teams and not just one team. What are the patterns that other teams can follow, or bring in some interesting patterns that other teams are following to your team, and so on, and always keep raising the bar in terms of technical aspects, coding standards, architectural design, reducing the pain points of developers, um, involved in a lot of hiring, and also making some suggestions to management to improve hiring and all that. So staff is still an overloaded role, and there are different flavors to it. If you want to know more in general about staff engineering, there are two books that I can recommend. One is by Will Larson, and another is by Tanya Riley, and they talk about staff engineering at different companies after taking interviews of different staff engineers at different types of companies. So it will give you a good perspective. But yes, they code for sure. Any best engineering blogs to read to understand real world distributed systems? Um, I mean, any company that has a strong engineering culture, they believe in publishing those blogs, how things are done differently. Like there's a lot of interesting blogs coming out of Netflix, Stripe, definitely Hotstar. There's definitely StarTrade that is doing amazing work with Apache Pino. They are sharing some internal details as to how things are implemented when it comes to indexes. um, so yes, there are many engineering blogs, and I wouldn't say best engineering blogs, because anyone who is ready to share how they have solved a real world problem uh, in an interesting way or in a more optimized manner, share their learnings. I think they are really great, and you should just refer to all those blogs. It's just that there is one problem with all these blogs, that not with the blogs, but the way we understand it, that we take things for granted and there's always context attached to it. So if one company released a blog saying, okay, microservices did not work for us, we moved back to monolith applications, uh, so we shouldn't just say that, okay, monolith is better than microservice or vice versa. So there's always context attached to it, and understanding that context is also critical. And yes, so any engineering blog that you know gives you a good idea of real world system design is great. Do you follow any articles or books daily to keep yourself updated on a daily basis regarding distributed systems? um, Daily is really high frequency, I would say, because updating someone daily is really difficult, given there are so many things I want to do. But yes, um, there is InfoQ podcast, there's Devox Tech Talks that I really follow, because so many great people share their views, share different talks about it, and they are very focused on the actual computer science and engineering behind it, and not just at a very high level. So I like to go deep into certain things and how things are working internally. Um, that takes a lot of time. So yes, reading books, I like reading books. I don't read books like page to page, but I select some of the sections that I find interesting, and I read them. I try to make notes. I try to talk to people about them, and to just validate my understanding and strengthen my concepts. So yeah, I mean, not daily, but yeah, weekly I try to read something here and there, on Medium, on LinkedIn, on some newsletters that I've subscribed to, on some YouTube channels, on Tech Talks. But yeah, nothing very specific that I do every week or daily. Your views on KSQL DB. I am very new to KSQL DB. I have done a lot of Kafka streaming programming, but I have never used KSQL DB in production. But I've only read about it because I'm planning a podcast with Matthias. Unfortunately, it couldn't happen this week because Matthias was sick, and Christmas and holidays. But I'm going to record a podcast soon with him, and I'm going to read more on KSQL DB. But I think the idea is to make it easier for developers and folks who don't really code, but they want to do stream processing on data, on Kafka topics, and all that. So it's another layer of abstraction. So KSQL DB is amazing because whatever takes away some work from you, and you can do some things faster in an optimized manner, I think it's always better. So I would encourage folks to learn more about KSQL DB, and just writing SQL, and uh, understanding what you can do instead of going and writing code. Because writing code and making all those joins and dealing with all the data, and joining within windows and all that can have some bugs, and doing it at your own, again, takes more effort. So yes, KSQL DB is amazing. Vignesh is saying, thank you for the amazing work with podcast. Thank you, Vignesh. Can you share books that you would recommend to someone aspiring to become a staff engineer, become proficient with distributed systems? Um, yes, I mean, there are many books actually. but nothing specific that will help you in becoming a staff engineer. So, as I said, staff engineer is nothing but a senior engineer who proves for many years, let's say, that he's senior enough, he knows different trade-offs, uh, he or she, and there's nothing specific that okay, this is the way you can become a staff engineer. It only depends on your understanding of the business domain in whatever company you're working at, and then proving and solving for the customer, and raising the bar. So if you are able to do that constantly for a couple of years, more years, I think anyone can become a staff engineer or a senior engineer. Becoming proficient with distributed system is a different thing, and yes, uh, distributed systems is again is a vast topic, and no one can say that I'm proficient with distributed systems because there is so many types of distributed system problems and so on. I think the way is to approach distributed system problems and understand the basics of it. I think that's a good start. Becoming proficient will take a lot of time, many years. People who have worked for 20 years in the industry, still I'm sure they cannot say I'm proficient with distributed systems because they are hard and there are new problems always coming up. And it's not about solving the same problem, but if you have already solved certain distributed system problem, of course you will be proficient with solving similar problems. um, but yeah, it takes time and you have to read books. So sharing books, the top book is definitely Designing Data Intensive Applications, because that is basic to advanced and so many different concepts in a very nice way that it's easy to understand. It's more or less like a journey through different aspects of data intensive applications that you can design. I recommend reading Database Internals because that is a really good book on understanding. Not too advanced, not too deep, but yes, deep enough for us to be good engineers in terms of understanding how databases are designed internally, typically modern databases, because distributed SQL is something that is coming up very fresh, very new. Many new people are, or companies are moving to distributed SQL, and that is going to change. That is going to be a lot, popular in future. So understanding basics of a database, how things work internally, is a great thing. Uh, for general software engineering, of course, anything that gives you like clean code and all those books are great. Understanding, there's also a book which compares NoSQL and SQL databases. I think NoSQL Distilled, or I don't remember the name, but I can share those books. And yeah, I'll keep sharing those on LinkedIn, but I don't recollect everything as of now. Um, okay, where was I? Can you share us your efforts behind recording a podcast? Yeah, I mean, it has changed a bit because when I started fresh doing it for the first time, it was very difficult. First of all, because scheduling part is the most difficult part, because first I have to decide on a topic that I want to learn, to reach out to folks who are really expert in that domain, and then I reach out to them. I sometimes I get a no that they don't have time. I reach out to other folks who might have some time, who are experts in that domain, and then when I finalize someone that okay, I want to do a podcast with him or her, and then I share a document. I share some of the available schedules that I am available to record, and then we do asynchronous, collaboration over a document, and the questions I want them to answer, general agenda, the flow, what makes sense for the audience. I get suggestions, I get feedback. I try to change some things on the document, and then once we both are good, we finalize on a date. We try to record. Of course, things go little, ad hoc, because I get curious. I might ask some question that is not in the document. So, but yeah, all my guests were so nice that they answer all my questions, even if they were not in the document. So yes, it is kind of decided what questions I want to touch, but not everything. There is always new questions that I keep on asking, and there is some twist and surprises for the guests always. So, um, but yeah, it takes a lot of effort, at least in the planning and deciding the content, and then the video editing part itself and releasing it. It's a different thing. I've gotten better because I've created some templates and I do things quickly. But recently, I've started editing and adding some visual components to it. So it takes a lot of time. And okay, uh, how do we? Pranjal is asking, how do we drill down to a good engineering blog? If we reach a particular website, say Netflix engineering blogs, we see a large number of blogs. How do you find the one which is off? Okay, um, that's a that's a great question. There's no single answer. What I typically do is there are certain areas I have really deep interest into, like databases, distributed systems in general, uh, anything related to high scale, you know, system. So it catches my attention immediately, and then I don't go ahead and read the entire blog immediately. I just skim through it, read the interesting parts, read the highlights that other folks have done. If there are no highlights, I just read the outline, and then sometimes I don't have time, so I just bookmark and forget forever. But when uh, I have more interest after reading the outline, I try to read the main parts of it and see if it still makes sense. If it still makes sense, I take out time and read the entire blog. Uh, but I try to find the problem that it is, trying to solve with that blog, or it is trying to describe with that blog. And if that problem is not very relevant to me, or the company I'm working at, or the project I'm working at, or the things I want to learn, I just skip it. Otherwise, I go ahead and read it. And while reading, I make sure I do take some notes. I highlight some things. I take some of the things that I want to learn in depth in future. Uh, okay. So another question: how do you apply, retain what you have read? That's a very difficult thing to do. So I think I retain whatever I talk to people about. So if let's say I learn about a new database, and if I just read, and then don't do anything, I just forget about it. But if I write a blog, or I create a podcast, or I talk to someone who might not be aware of the database, or who might be an expert, both ways I try to reiterate that knowledge that I've learned. I might do some mistakes. They might be able to correct me, or I might be able to go back and correct myself and when I'm not sure. But I think the idea is to retaining is needs some practice. So if you read an algorithm, a new algorithm, okay, you will retain it for, let's say, a week, or 2 weeks, 1 month. But if you don't apply that algorithm or anything new concept, then you are going to forget it. So uh, applying makes a lot of sense, and applying can mean talking to someone, writing a blog, uh, teaching someone, or just coding it out, depending on what kind of concept it is. So yes, retention is really important, because otherwise whatever you're reading or learning is waste. Taking notes help a lot, because writing, and that too handwritten notes, at least it works for me. So handwritten notes, creating some random diagrams, it helps me map certain things in my mind, and retention is better. Hi Karthik, thanks for joining. Thanks for the awesome podcast. Thank you for the support. Vishwas, actually Kafka streams can't be used with Python, so felt like ksql db sdk as the only option for transforming streams, unless I don't go to pyflink. Yeah, I mean, there are of course some limitations. uh, I think Kafka streams, okay, I might be wrong, but maybe it's available with Python or not. But yeah, I mean, I don't use Python a lot. I'm more on Java, Kotlin, Scala, and all that. So I've never felt that problem. But yes, that's a great point. If Kafka Streams SDK isn't available with Python, you have to use ksql db, and that again might have certain limitations to things what you can do with streams versus ksql db. So um, yeah, yeah. Karthik says on DB internals, there's a good podcast with Frank. Frank is a great person in the world of databases, and he kindly accepted my invite, and we did a podcast on database internals. He also then introduced me to Alex Debris, and which was one of my favorite podcasts that I did with on DynamoDB. So yes, please watch that if you have interest in database internals and DynamoDB. I am looking forward to do more episodes with Alex and Frank in future. Pratik says hi Pratik, thanks for joining. Your thoughts on job shifts to another country? What were your key motivations when you shifted to Germany? Uh, that's a big question, great question, and this is one of the common questions that I get asked. Um, it has again context to it because not everyone in this is in the same situation. There is money factor to it. There is standard of living. There is job opportunities. There is work culture. There are so many things that might be important to you. For me personally, I was lucky that I had a good standard of living. Even in India, I had a decent salary, so money wasn't a big reason for me when I moved here. But I think work culture, more exposure to different types of thinking and different types of problem solving, and slight laid back approach where there is more focus given to um, the problems we are solving, and not just working towards a goal, towards the deadline and all that. So I wanted to look for new exposure, so I interviewed for a few companies in Amsterdam, in Berlin, in Spain. um, I got a couple of offers, and then I decided to move to Berlin because um I knew a little bit about Berlin. My friends were here, so I knew how it's going to look like. So I took a leap of faith, and um, I came here since I'm here since 5 years now. The thing I like is I get some time apart from work, and there's good work-life balance, at least in the companies that I work for. And not to generalize, there are of course companies in India that provides amazing work-life balance. There are companies in Germany that are not that great in work-life balance. So uh, find your motivation. Not everything might be relevant to you. If salary is an option or is a concern, you can always move to another country. If work life balance is a concern, yes, Germany, in general, Europe is a great place for work life balance, for support from the government, for if you get unemployed, if you get laid off and all that, you have good insurance, you have social security and all that. But that's not the case for everyone, right? As I said, I had all these things in India as well. So find your own motivation, but don't just look at one dimension, which is money or you know um, any other thing. Just look at from a holistic view. Pratik, thanks a lot, Pratik Pandey, for joining. I did a podcast with Pratik Pandey on system design, interviews, and beyond. And he's a great friend, and that episode will give you a good insight into a system design framework and how to start thinking about it, how to approach any problem. So do look at it if you haven't yet, and I'm pretty sure you're going to learn from that episode. So thanks, Pratik Pandey. uh, Sunpriya Kaur, is it better to learn new topic by creating your own project and applying, or search for problem statement in our current company and learn on the job? Yeah, it's any for any topic. If you want to learn into depth, it's best to have certain projects that you build on your own, um, because at your company, at your job, there are certain constraints, there are certain restrictions, there are deadlines. So you don't get enough opportunity always that you can go into deep, you can apply all those things. um, so I would say if you're getting enough opportunity to go deep into certain topic and learn new things at your job, go for it. You no need to create your own project. But if you don't get that opportunity at your work, because it's a legacy project, it's a mostly maintenance work, or there's a lot of deadline, there are other types of work that you're doing. um, so yes, build your own project, and that's a great way of learning anything. And yeah, I would recommend that. Pranjal, how much time do you invest researching a topic? Say if you're reading about Apache Pinot, which is say completely new to you, how do you know that I have enough knowledge to go to talk to an expert? I never have enough knowledge. Um I always the one thing I have is curiosity, and the attitude that I accept that I don't know, and that's I think the most important whenever you want to go to any expert. So I I try to cover the basics. So when I let's talk about Apache Pinot. So I had some background with Apache Pinot, so that is a little difficult to explain. Um, but yes, for any other topic, I at least try to cover the basics first. I try to implement certain code if it's certain something hands-on, for example, Kafka streams, um, and then I just reach out to them. I lay out a plan and I keep reading about it. I strengthen my concepts. I ask them if I need any help, and typically my guests are so awesome that they are ready to help, they are ready to support. So I would say typically if it's a new topic, I at least spend a week or two on reading about it, from different resources or watching videos or trying it out, and then reach out to. So I try to paralyze. I don't um, I reach out to expert even if I don't know anything about the topic, because scheduling takes time. And then if they say yes, if it's happening, then I read more. So yes, I typically do that. Do you think is it okay to choose what part of tech I want to be specialized in early years of career? Like I was full stack dev for a few months, but past 1 year I have focused on backend only. Yes, I mean that clarity is really important, and that clarity should ideally come from your passion, your interest. um, so if you think that certain area interests you more, um, then of course, I mean the clarity you have the better, so you can always go and specialize. That way you'll have more time in diving deep into certain area and not being halfway through in different areas. So if you already know your the area you want to specialize, go for it. If you don't stress it a lot. I would say in new opportunities, new projects will drive you to different decisions. And don't limit yourself, let's say to back end. Let's say there's a great project coming up for front end development or something like that. If you're new to your career and not too deep into back end, go for it. The worst thing you will do is uh, that you will learn something by failing at it. So um, yeah, it's not that bad, but be cautious. I mean, you don't want to change dimensions at a different level. But yeah, though specializing is challenging. That takes a lot of time as well. So but yeah, it's totally okay to choose any part of tech you want to work on, but choose wisely. Yes, the episode with Pratik Pandey was awesome. So thank you, Pranjal. And if you haven't watched that episode, please do. Um, Mohit, thanks for the podcast. Really helpful. Thank you, Mohit, for joining and watching the podcast. So since there are no more questions, I'll quickly announce the next podcast that I'm going to release. Um, so this next week, I'm going to release the podcast on geo distributed application with Dennis from Yoga by DB, and that podcast will help you understand what it takes to be globally available and not just in one country. How to make your services highly available, more resilient, compliant with GDPR and all that, using the power of cloud APIs, distributed databases, and all that. So it's going to be released soon. I'm just taking a lot of time these days with video editing. Um, but yeah, I'm working on that. The next question is, sorry, next podcast is, okay, so there are more questions. Let me, just a general question. Are you Maharashtrian? Yes and no. I mean, Maharashtrian, if you say someone who lives in Maharashtra, no, I am from Indore, MP. But my parents used to live in Maharashtra, and you might guess from the surname, I speak Marathi at home. So yes and no, I am Maharashtrian. Karthik, what is the one engineering challenge, Kavila, that you faced in your engineering career which pushed you into a discomfort zone for some time? There have been many such cases, and it was mainly related to learning new things quickly. And because I've been fortunate or unfortunate to be in projects and companies where things were needed to be developed from scratch, and we had this opportunity to learn from the mistakes that others have done already within the organization and not repeat the same. And on the other hand, also try to experiment with new tech stack and build something quickly. So even in Zalando, in Twilio, and in HubSpot, I was fortunate to work on a greenfield project that was not live. So we had to finish things on like very quickly with strict deadlines, but learning new things because we wanted to try some new tech stack, move things quickly. So, for example, I learned Scala for the first time when I joined Twilio, and Scala has a huge learning curve. So, and learning Scala while maintaining some old system as well as building some new system, and also learning Kafka streams and everything around that uh, was a bit of a challenge because there's always a huge learning curve there. um, so yeah, I think learning anything new and that deadline of or constant deadline and constant push from peers and seniors and management that we need to reach this goal with good quality, while having that burden on your shoulders to raise the bar of your team and do things in a way that does not bite you back. I think that definitely keeps you on your toes and pushes you to the discomfort zone that okay, you have to keep learning, otherwise you will get stale. um, so yeah, I would say all these three companies have done that for me. Okay, so there's no more question for now. So the next podcast I'm going to record is with Venkat Subramaniam. Uh, but that's actually in end of January or early February. But that I'm going to do on clean code. So if you don't know Venkat Subramaniam, just search for it. He's a great speaker. He has given so many tech talks at DevOps, at different famous tech talk YouTube channels. You can find him. He has written many books on Java, Kotlin, on concurrent programming. He is deeply involved with agile development and all that. So um, yeah, that podcast is going to be really interesting, and I have to prepare a lot for that, to be honest, because I haven't even started yet. I just have an outline in my mind, and he's a really senior person, like veteran in our industry. So I have to prepare a lot for that. The next one I'm doing is in end of January again, with the author of Grokking the System Design Interview, Arslan Ahmed. And of course, we will be talking about system design because that's his specialization. Uh, so we are going to solve a system design problem in a pragmatic manner, both for interviews and beyond. And we'll get some tips from him on how to go about it. So that will be another one. Um, then, if you have heard about patterns of distributed systems, that is published on martinfowler.com from ThoughtWorks. I think Unmesh Joshi is the author of that, and I'm going to record a podcast with him soon. Um I have other podcasts with Matthias on KSQL which is in early January, and on highly performant real world data structures like roaring bitmaps with Richard Start in coming weeks. I also have one with Alex Debris on data modeling with DynamoDB, which is a sequence that we wanted to do after the first DynamoDB masterclass, and that will be in mid of January as well. So yes, January is pretty packed for me, and I'm going to prepare and make sure I keep preparing and keep building those good podcast episodes. Salman is asking, hi, how to be confident before pushing the build to production? Um, I mean, confidence comes from uh, enough testing and safety nets that you might have. So I'm a big proponent of having good tests right from the unit test level to acceptance test and automation behind that, and then safety nets that help you prevent any small mistakes like configuration errors or something that might be causing an out of memory, or any code review tools that you may have that might suggest you any obvious bugs that might exist in your code base. So testing at all levels and testing different edge cases as well. So there's a lot of times when things go wrong because you don't have enough validations, or you haven't really thought about the data size in memory, or you haven't really thought about what happens when configuration system goes wrong, when someone just manually changes some configuration and all that. So um, having those automation test cases even in production, I think it's a great way to be confident. And then I think the basic thing is about uh, following the best practices. So if you follow best practices for writing code, for writing tests, for manually testing certain things, I think that's a great way. And it will come. It does come with making mistakes, unfortunately. Um, so, and always be, or always have this fear of breaking something, so you be extra cautious. But again, it needs some balance, that you're not too fearful to be able to move to uh, production. So yeah, those are some of the things. Do you think TDD slows productivity? um, I also did a podcast on TDD, and there we also identified some cases when TDD might not be the best thing to do. At least it depends on the context. But I don't think TDD slows productivity, because when so the common misconception people have with TDD is that TDD is about writing tests before you write code. That's just one part of it. I think it's the philosophy that you design your code by writing tests, and that design itself is important. So if you have a use case where there is no legacy component, there is you have good understanding of the code base, or you have good understanding of the problem you want to solve, I think TDD is a great way to approach that problem, because uh, it will uh, have your code cleanly designed. It will reduce your cognitive overload, so you start thinking in small incremental steps and not just go in n number of directions before even solving the basic problem. So TDD is a great way. So I don't think in any way it slows your productivity, unless you are doing it incorrectly, or you're applying it for a very small thing that may not be best for TDD. So yeah, I would say TDD needs a lot of practice, and uh, if you want to do TDD, find someone who knows a little bit about TDD, and do some pair programming, get some feedback, and approach that. So it will definitely help you. Um, I think time spent on TDD compensates for the time amount of time you'll spend to resolve bugs later. Yes, it happens sometimes. So as I said, the cognitive overload I think that's the biggest pain developers have, because they try to solve a problem and then they create new problems, solve them, and they get distracted in solving some other problems. Meanwhile, when they come back to the main problem, they might have injected some bugs, they missed out some requirements, and all that creates a lot of confusion. So, going in a very incremental, one step at a time fashion definitely helps you prevent any bugs that you may have. Can you shed some light on domain driven design? I mean, it's a great way of thinking about how to design any system using the principles of DDD, and how to keep those boundaries between different domain objects. And so I would say there's a great book on domain driven design, so that will definitely help. um, i I had this idea on doing a podcast on domain driven design. I'm yet to finalize anyone on that topic, but yeah, I'll create a podcast on that soon, maybe in second quarter of this year, maybe. One more question that someone asked me, and I think it's a problem for many folks who are starting out new, who don't have a lot of experience, or who are from tier 3 college that did not give them enough exposure or something like that. But I keep getting this question, that how do you get better at communication, especially at work? And how do you get your thought process structured, and how do you speak in a way which is effective, which can convince people? uh, so I think what I did around 15 years ago when I was in college was to practice gathering my thought process and giving it a shape. And maybe if it's helpful for anyone out there, so what I used to do was, I would pick up any particular topic, any object that I see in my room, and I would pick up my phone, I would turn on the recording, and I would start speaking on that particular object or that topic for at least 5 minutes. Whatever comes to my mind, it can be any rubbish, anything that comes to your mind. Just start collecting your thoughts and speaking and recording. Once you have the recording for any particular topic, you go back, you read that recording or listen to that recording, and you figure out some problems that you have. So there is definitely some common patterns, so common things that you do does not sound very well, so try to fix those. So that cycle of recording, listening to it, and giving feedback, and fixing it, and re-recording helps a lot. Once you do that, you get enough focus on your thoughts and control on your thoughts and giving it structure. uh, Improving vocabulary of different terms that you use, that closely relates to the topic, is really helpful. And then once you're confident that you can speak in front of someone else, so try to talk to people, try to be in discussions which are relevant to yourself. Try to socialize with people and try to communicate that, and that takes it to the next level. Once that is done, try public speaking, gathering your thought process, giving presentations, and all that. So that is something I have shared with many people, and it has helped me as well, early in my career, and I hope it will help you as well. There was another question that is pretty common, was how do you um, have that confidence, or let's say, when do you have that confidence in your career, that okay, now everything I can solve? So this is a very interesting question, and I see this question coming up from folks who are new to this industry, and they have this fear that, okay, I don't know enough things, or I might be doing something wrong, or even if I spend 10 years here, I won't reach anywhere, or something like that. So I suggest not thinking in that direction and focusing on the basics. And regarding the confidence, I said it will never come, that I can never be that confident that I can solve any problem. I can only be confident that I can learn how to solve that problem, and I can learn quickly. So I think the thing that people should focus on is learning how to learn quickly, and that will take you, a long way in your journey. So it will never happen that you have confidence for anything that comes your way that you will solve immediately, but at least you will know some patterns, some mistakes that you have done in the past, and you will learn some things very very fast. So um, yeah, I think that helps. So don't think that you're missing out on something just because everyone's journey is different. Don't get frustrated looking at someone else's journey, how fast they become like a director or VP, or how they are able to succeed in their own business and all that. But it's your journey, so keep focusing on the basics, and you'll reach there one day. uh, how can someone work on microservices when the company where he works doesn't work on it? Because in every interview they ask questions about it. um, if your company doesn't work on microservices, you won't get it by working on the projects in your company, so you have to do it on your own. You have to contribute on open source. You have to attend tech talks just to get some new ideas how people are solving it. So don't just get stuck with what's happening inside your company. Go out there, reach out to people, read books, read blogs, uh, not books as in theoretical books, but how things are done practically, and just do those things. Because otherwise, I mean, that is the best you can do. Or you can just switch companies and work at a project, but again, for that you need the knowledge, you need the experience. So I would say don't get stuck with the idea that okay, my company doesn't give me enough opportunity. You have enough control, you have enough resources. If you don't have resources, ask me, I can provide you some pointers, but don't get stuck there. Do some things on your own. Reach out to people, and learn from them. Cool. So yeah, we are almost one hour into the live session. So I have shared the couple of questions that I get typically from folks. Thanks a lot for asking all those wonderful questions. Thanks a lot all for joining. And there's a lot more interesting episodes coming in future in the new year. So have a great new year, start of the year, and stay tuned to the GeekNarrator podcast. If you haven't subscribed, anyone here, please subscribe. That gives me more motivation to create more episodes, and also share it with your network, because I also want my podcast to grow among like-minded people who are really interested into deep technical discussions. Um, Great. Thank you. Thanks a lot for joining, and see you in the next live stream. I'll do it soon and more frequently. Bye bye.